Emily, don't even think about showing up tonight. Mom doesn't need you ruining her birthday. I sat in my 23rd floor office overlooking downtown Seattle at sunset, holding the phone away from my ear as my father's voice cut through the speaker. His tone was cold, dismissive, like he was giving orders to someone beneath him. I glanced at the contract spread across my mahogany desk. Pages that would transform everything I had worked for during the past 5 years. The sale of my company, my dream, my proof that I was more than the invisible daughter they pretended I wasn't. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply said, "I understand, Dad," and ended the call. I set the phone down, smiled to myself, and picked up my pen. The clock on the wall showed 6:30 in the evening. The party would begin in 90 minutes. I signed my name on the final page. I remained seated in my office after hanging up, staring at the signed contract in front of me. The silence felt heavy but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of decision, of clarity. I thought about the journey that brought me here. Horizon Innovations, my company. 5 years ago, it was nothing but an idea scribbled on a napkin in a coffee shop, a dream I carried in my chest while working 3 jobs to keep the lights on. Now it employed 87 people, occupied this beautiful office space, and had just been acquired by Summit Tech Group for $47 million. I leaned back in my chair and let my mind drift to childhood. I was 7 years old, standing in the kitchen with my report card clutched in my small hands, all A's. I was so proud. My brother Ethan, 4 years older, had just shown Dad his math test with a big red A circled at the top. Dad had lifted Ethan up, spun him around, told him he was brilliant. When I showed my report card, Dad barely glanced at it. "That's good, Emily. But you know what would really help this family? If you learn to cook better, Mom could use help in the kitchen. Ethan needs to focus on his studies." I remember the way my excitement deflated like a balloon losing air. I was 7. I had straight A's, and all he saw was someone who should be in the kitchen. That pattern continued through my entire childhood. Ethan got sent to Crestwood Academy, an expensive private school with the best teachers and resources. I stayed at Roosevelt Public School. When I asked why, Dad said, "Boys need the investment. They're the ones who will support families someday. You'll get married, Emily. Your husband will take care of you." When Ethan wanted to join the robotics club, Dad bought him a $500 kit. When I wanted to join the coding club, Dad said it was a waste of time for girls. When Ethan got his driver's license, Dad bought him a used Honda. When I got mine, I had to save up my babysitting money to share Mom's old station wagon. Fast forward to 5 years ago. I was 26, fresh out of business school, bursting with an idea. I had developed software prototypes during grad school. Simple, but effective management tools for small businesses. I needed $50,000 to turn it into something real. I sat across from Dad in his study, nervous but hopeful. I showed him my business plan, my market research, my financial projections. He didn't even finish reading the first page. "Emily, this is cute, but you don't have what it takes to run a company. Business requires tough decisions, long hours, thick skin. I don't want to waste money on something that'll fail in 6 months." My answer was no. 3 months later, Ethan came to Dad with an idea for a restaurant chain. Ethan had no business degree, no restaurant experience, just enthusiasm and Dad's favoritism. Dad wrote him a check for $200,000 on the spot. No interest, no payback schedule, just a gift wrapped in the language of investment. I watched it happen. I watched Ethan's restaurant struggle, then fail, one by one. Within 2 years, all 3 locations were closed. Dad never asked for the money back. He called it a learning experience, said Ethan was brave for trying. Meanwhile, I had taken my idea to a bank. They rejected me twice. On the third try, a loan officer named Janet took a chance on me with a $20,000 small business loan at 14% interest. I worked as a bartender at night, a receptionist during the day, and built my software on weekends. I slept 4 hours a night. I ate ramen noodles for dinner. I cried in my car more times than I could count. But I built something real, something that worked. Now, Ethan was 35, unemployed, living off what remained of Dad's generosity. But at every family dinner, Dad still introduced him as my son, the entrepreneur. Meanwhile, when people asked about me, Dad changed the subject. He didn't know what I did. He never asked. I could have been selling pencils on the street for all he cared. I looked down at the contract again. $47 million. Summit Tech Group, the third largest tech company in America, wanted what I had built. Their CEO, Gregory Morrison, had called me 3 weeks ago. Emily, we've been watching your company. You've created something remarkable. We want to bring Horizon Innovations into our portfolio, and we want you to stay on as senior advisor. The offer was more money than I had ever imagined, but there was a catch. Gregory needed to finalize everything tonight. I have a board meeting tomorrow morning at 8, he had explained during our last call. They need this signed and announced before then. Can you meet me at 8 this evening? I thought about the timing. Mom's birthday party started at 7. It would run until 10, knowing how Dad liked to show off at these events. I had explained the situation to Gregory. I told him about my family, about being excluded, about the phone call I knew was coming. Gregory had been sympathetic but firm. Emily, I understand family is complicated, but this is the only window we have. If we miss it, the deal falls through. The board moves on to other acquisitions. It's now or never. So, I made my choice. I called Mom first. Her voice was warm when she answered, the only warmth I ever felt from that house. Honey, I'm so sorry about your father. I heard what he said. I didn't know he was going to call you. I told her about the deal, about the meeting, about the choice I had to make. There was silence on the line. Then she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. Go, sweetheart. This is your moment. Don't let anyone take it from you. I'm proud of you. I'll explain everything to the guests. But before I could thank her, I heard Dad's voice in the background. What are you telling her? Give me that phone. There was a scuffle. Then Dad's voice came through, sharp and angry. If you don't show up tonight, you are no longer my daughter. Do you understand me? You will destroy your mother's special day, and I will never forgive you. I took a deep breath. I understand, Dad. I have to go now. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from relief. I was finally choosing myself. I grabbed my purse, took one last look at the signed contract, and walked out of my office. It was 7:00. The city lights were beginning to sparkle below. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. I turned off my phone and headed to my car. The Metropolitan Bistro was one of Seattle's finest restaurants, the kind of place where deals worth millions happened over perfectly cooked steaks and aged wine. I arrived at 7:30, my heels clicking against the marble floor as the hostess led me to a private room in the back. Gregory Morrison was already there, sitting at the head of a long table. He stood when I entered, extending his hand with a warm smile. Emily, thank you for coming. I know tonight wasn't easy for you. Gregory was 51, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He had built Summit Tech from a small software company into an empire worth billions. Next to him sat his chief financial officer, David Wells, and their lead attorney, a woman named Jennifer Walsh. The room felt professional but welcoming. Gregory gestured to the seat beside him. Please sit. Let's go over the final details. Jennifer opened a leather folder and slid it across the table. This is the final agreement. Everything we discussed is here. $40 million paid immediately upon signing, $7 million in performance-based compensation over the next 2 years. You'll remain as senior advisor for a minimum of 1 year at a salary of $250,000 annually. After that, you're free to pursue other ventures or stay with us. Your team keeps their jobs. Your company name stays on the product. You maintain creative input on future development. I read through every page carefully. This was the biggest decision of my life. I couldn't afford to miss anything, but everything was exactly as we had negotiated. Fair, generous, respectful. Gregory watched me read, patient and calm. Take your time. This is your life's work. You should be certain. When I reached the final page, I looked up at him. Why do you want my company so much? There are bigger firms out there. We're not the only ones doing management software. Gregory leaned back in his chair. Because you built something from nothing. You saw a gap in the market that nobody else saw. Small businesses need affordable, intuitive software, and you delivered. But more than that, you have integrity. Your clients love you. Your employees are loyal. That kind of culture doesn't happen by accident. It happens because the founder cares. We want that DNA in our company. His words meant more to me than he could know. For the first time in my life, someone in a position of power saw my value. I picked up the pen. The clock on the wall showed 7:55. I signed my name. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from emotion. 5 years of sleepless nights, 5 years of doubt and struggle, 5 years of proving myself to a world that expected me to fail. It all came down to this signature. Gregory shook my hand. Congratulations, Emily. You're officially part of the Summit Tech family. David smiled and poured champagne into 4 glasses. To new beginnings. We raised our glasses and drank. The champagne tasted like victory. Gregory glanced at his watch. Our PR team is releasing the press statement right now, 80 sharp. He opened his laptop and turned it toward me. I saw the press release on the screen. The headline read, Summit Tech Group acquires Horizon Innovations for $47 million. Below it was a photo of me from our company website alongside text describing me as a visionary entrepreneur who transformed the small business software landscape. I felt my chest tighten. This was really happening. Within 15 minutes, this will be on Business Insider, TechCrunch, and Bloomberg. Gregory said, Your life is about to change. I hope you're ready. I thought about Mom's party happening right now, just a few miles away. I thought about Dad probably bragging about Ethan to his friends, never once mentioning me. I thought about how none of them knew what I had accomplished until now. Meanwhile, across town, the party was in full swing. The house was decorated with balloons and streamers, the dining room table covered with food and a large cake. About 40 guests filled the space, friends, family, colleagues from Dad's accounting firm, neighbors from the street. Mom sat in the living room, smiling politely while people wished her happy birthday, but I could see in her eyes that she was thinking about me. Dad stood near the fireplace, holding court with a group of men, Ethan at his side. My brother was in the middle of some story about his new business idea, his latest scheme to make money without actually working. At 8:15, a man named Thomas, one of Dad's business associates and the CEO of a small consulting firm, pulled out his phone to check his messages. His eyes went wide. He let out a sound somewhere, between a gasp and a laugh. James, did you know your daughter just sold her company for $47 million? The room went silent. People stopped mid-conversation. Heads turned toward Thomas. Dad's face went pale. What are you talking about? Thomas walked over and showed him the phone screen. Right here. It's all over the business news. Emily Davis, CEO of Horizon Innovations, acquired by Summit Tech Group, $47 million. The room erupted in whispers. Guests pulled out their own phones, frantically searching for the news. Within seconds, multiple people were reading the same headlines, looking at the same photo of me. I didn't know Emily had a company. 47 million? That's incredible. James, why didn't you tell us your daughter was so successful? Dad stood frozen, his face turning red. He tried to speak, but words wouldn't come. Ethan's confident expression crumbled. He looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Finally, Dad managed to stammer out a response. Yes, well, Emily has been doing some tech work. I knew she was involved in software. But his voice was weak, unconvincing. It was obvious he knew nothing about my company, nothing about my success. The guests exchanged glances. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked amazed. Mom stood up from her chair, tears streaming down her face. She raised her glass of wine. To my daughter Emily, who achieved what she dreamed of despite everything. Her voice cracked on the last word. A few people raised their glasses and murmured agreement, but the mood in the room had shifted. It was no longer a celebration. It was awkward, tense, filled with unspoken questions. Dad excused himself and walked quickly to his study. I could picture him there, hands shaking as he dialed my number. My phone, still turned off in my purse, didn't ring, but I knew he was trying. Back at the restaurant, Gregory and I were finishing our champagne when my phone suddenly buzzed with a flood of messages. I had turned it back on to check for any urgent business matters. 15 missed calls from Dad, 10 text messages. I didn't read them. Instead, my phone rang again. Dad's name appeared on the screen. I excused myself from the table and answered. Dad's voice exploded through the speaker. Emily, what the hell is this? You made us look like fools. I stepped into the restaurant hallway, keeping my voice calm. I didn't make you look like anything, Dad. I just lived my life. You need to call the press and tell them this is wrong. Tell them the deal fell through. Why would I do that? It's true. Because you're embarrassing this family. People think we didn't support you. I paused. You didn't support me, Dad. How dare you? I want you to fix this right now. I'm sorry, Dad. I can't do that. Enjoy Mom's party. I hung up. Gregory was standing in the doorway, a concerned look on his face. Family troubles? Something like that? He put a hand on my shoulder. For what it's worth, I think you handled that with remarkable grace. We walked back to the table. David and Jennifer congratulated me again, and we spent another hour discussing transition plans and timelines. By the time I left the restaurant, it was almost 10. I drove home through the quiet streets of Seattle, my mind spinning. My phone kept buzzing with messages. Dad, Ethan, relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanting to reconnect. I turned the phone to silent and tossed it on the passenger seat. When I got home to my small apartment in Bellevue, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. For the first time in my entire life, I felt free. Free from the weight of their expectations. Free from the need to prove myself to people who would never see me. I raised my glass to the skyline. Here's to me. I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. For a moment, I forgot about everything. Then I reached for my phone, and reality came flooding back. 342 unread emails, 67 text messages, 23 voicemails. I scrolled through the emails first. Most were congratulatory messages from clients, colleagues, industry contacts. Warm words from people who had watched me build Horizon Innovations from nothing. But mixed in were strange emails from people I didn't know. Requests for money, pitches for investment, sob stories from supposed distant relatives I had never heard of. I deleted those without reading past the first line. Social media was a different story. The news about the acquisition had spread everywhere. Most comments were positive. Congratulations. Inspiring. Well-deserved. But there were negative ones too. She probably got lucky. I bet it was family money that started her company. Trust fund baby trying to act self-made. I closed the apps. I had learned long ago not to let strangers' opinions define me. I got dressed and headed to the office. Today, I would officially announce the acquisition to my team. They deserve to hear it from me, not from the internet. At 9:30, I was in the middle of a staff meeting when our receptionist, Amanda, knocked on the conference room door. Her face looked worried. "Emily, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your father is here, and he's quite upset." My stomach dropped. I excused myself and walked to the lobby. Dad stood near the front desk, his face red and tight with anger. Ethan was next to him, arms crossed, wearing the same entitled expression he had worn our entire lives. "Dad, what are you doing here? We need to talk now, in private." I led them to a small conference room and closed the door. Dad didn't sit. He stood with his hands on the table, leaning forward like he was trying to intimidate me. "I'll get straight to the point, Emily. I want my share." "My share of what?" "The money from the deal. I funded your company. Remember?" I stared at him, genuinely confused. "I funded what? You refused to give me a single dollar." "That's not how I remember it. I gave you $50,000 to start." "I want half of what you made." The room spun. This was insane. "Dad, you told me I would fail. You said no. I have the rejection in my memory clear as day." Ethan stepped forward. "And you stole my business idea anyway. I told you about management software 3 years ago. You took it and built your company." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "This is insane. You're both lying." Dad's face darkened. "Watch your mouth, young lady. I have documents to prove it." Ethan spoke with our lawyer. "You have 2 choices. Give us what we deserve, or we'll sue." Dad reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. He slid it across the table. Inside was a legal notice from Carter and Associates, a law firm downtown. I scanned the document. They were demanding $23.5 million, half of the $47 million. The claim cited breach of verbal agreement regarding initial investment. "This is fraud. You never gave me any money." Dad crossed his arms. "Prove it. You think a judge will believe you over me? I've been a respected businessman in this city for 30 years. People know my name." "What do you have?" "A 5-year-old startup." Ethan added, "And I have emails where we discussed the software idea. You took my concept and ran with it." I felt my hands shaking. "Get out of my office." Dad leaned closer. "You have 48 hours to respond. After that, this goes public. Imagine what the press will say. Successful CEO accused of stealing from her own family. Your reputation will be destroyed." They left without another word. I stood alone in the conference room, my heart pounding. I immediately called Amanda Price, my company lawyer. She had been with me since the beginning, one of the few people I trusted completely. I explained everything. Amanda listened carefully, then sighed. "Emily, this is a shakedown. But the problem is, verbal agreements are tricky to disprove. Do you have documentation showing you didn't receive money from him?" "I have bank statements. I took out a loan from First National Bank. It's all on record." "That's good. But they could argue he gave you cash. Without a paper trail, it becomes, he said, she said." "What about Ethan's claim?" "If he has emails mentioning management software, even vaguely, it could create doubt." Not that he'd win, but it muddies the waters. Then Amanda dropped the worst news. There's another issue. This kind of lawsuit could trigger clauses in your sale agreement with Summit Tech. If there's legal uncertainty about ownership, they might have grounds to delay payment or even reduce the purchase price. I felt the floor drop out from under me. You mean I could lose the deal? It's possible. I'll contact their legal team today, but Emily, you need to prepare for the worst. That afternoon, I received a link from Amanda. Someone had leaked the story to the press. The headline read, "Family Drama Behind Tech Success Story. Father and Brother File Lawsuit Against Horizon Innovations CEO." The article cited unnamed sources close to the family, claiming I had used family funds to start my company and refused to repay them. The comment section exploded. Some people defended me, others assumed guilt. Family doesn't lie about money like this. There must be truth to it. Where there's smoke, there's fire. By evening, the Posh Horizon innovation scandal was trending on Twitter. I watched my reputation, built over 5 years of hard work, begin to crumble in real time. Then my phone rang. Gregory Morrison. His voice was serious. "Emily, we need to talk. The board saw the news about the lawsuit." I felt sick. "And they're concerned. If your father can prove he funded the company, there could be ownership complications. We might need to put the final payment on hold." "For how long?" "Could be months, maybe longer." I closed my eyes. This was exactly what Dad wanted, to destroy everything I had built. Not because he deserved money, but because he couldn't stand to see me succeed where Ethan had failed. I thanked Gregory and promised to keep him updated. Then I sat in my office as the sun set, watching the city lights flicker on. I thought about giving up, about settling just to make it go away. But then I remembered every single time Dad had dismissed me, every time he had favored Ethan, every time he had made me feel small, and I got angry. Really angry. I wasn't going to let them take this from me. I started digging into the lawyer representing Dad and Ethan, Carter and Associates. The lead partner on the case was a man named Dylan Carter. The name sounded familiar. I searched through my old emails and found it. 3 years ago, Dylan had contacted me about investing in Horizon Innovations. He had offered $100,000 for 60% of my company. It was an insulting offer, and I had politely declined. Dylan had called me back, angry. "You'll regret this, Emily. I'll make sure of it." I had thought he was just blowing off steam. Now I understood. This wasn't about Dad or Ethan. This was revenge. Dylan had found my vulnerable family situation and exploited it. He had probably approached Ethan first, offering to help him get money from me, then pulled Dad into the scheme. This was bigger than a family dispute. This was a calculated attack. The next morning, I had a meeting scheduled at Summit Tech headquarters. I arrived at 8, walking through their sleek glass lobby to the executive floor. Gregory's assistant led me to a conference room where Gregory, Jennifer Walsh, and the chief financial officer, David Wells, were waiting. The atmosphere was different from our celebratory dinner. No smiles, no champagne, just serious faces and closed laptops. Gregory gestured for me to sit. "Emily, thank you for coming. I'll be direct. Our board met this morning. They're nervous about the lawsuit." Jennifer opened a folder. "If your father can prove he provided initial funding, he might have a legitimate claim to partial ownership of Horizon Innovations. That could complicate our acquisition." I pulled out my own folder. "I have bank statements showing I never received money from him. I took out a loan from First National Bank for $20,000. It's all documented." Jennifer nodded. "I believe you, but legal battles take time, and in business, perception matters as much as truth. Our shareholders are watching. If this becomes a prolonged court case, our stock price could be affected. David spoke up. We're not canceling the deal, Emily, but we need to protect ourselves. We're putting the second half of the payment on hold until this is resolved. I felt my chest tighten. For how long? Gregory looked uncomfortable. Could be months. Maybe a year. A year. I had employees who were counting on bonuses from this deal. I had investors expecting their returns. We understand, Gregory said. But we can't expose ourselves to legal risk. This is business. We spent another 30 minutes going over contingency plans. $20 million of my $47 million deal would be held in escrow indefinitely. After taxes and paying back my initial investors and bank loans, I had only about $10 million accessible. Still a significant amount, but not what I had planned for. I walked out of that meeting feeling like the walls were closing in. Back at my office, I called an emergency meeting with my leadership team. My Chief Technology Officer, Nathan Brooks, my Head of Sales, Madison Cooper, and my Operations Manager, Lauren Hayes, sat around the table, all looking worried. I explained the situation as honestly as I could. The acquisition is still happening, but there's a legal complication. Some of our payout is delayed. Nobody's losing their jobs. The company is secure, but I wanted you to hear this from me. Nathan leaned forward. Is it true that your family is claiming they funded the company? No, it's not true. This is a baseless lawsuit and I'm going to fight it. But in the meantime, business continues as usual. The meeting ended, but I saw doubt in some of their eyes. That hurt more than anything Dad had said. These were people who had believed in me, who had worked alongside me through the hardest times. Now they were questioning whether I had been honest with them. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A man's voice, smooth and cold. Hello, Emily. This is Dylan Carter. I should have known you were behind this. Behind what? I'm just representing clients who have legitimate claims. My father never gave me any money. You know that. Can you prove it? Because I have bank statements showing a $50,000 withdrawal from his account the same week you registered your company. Maybe he gave that money to someone who gave it to you. Maybe it was cash. The point is, there's reasonable doubt. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you want, Dylan? I told you 3 years ago you'd regret saying no to me, but I'm reasonable. Drop the sale to Summit Tech. Sell to my investment group. Instead, we'll pay $30 million, all cash, no questions asked. The lawsuit disappears. You're trying to steal my company. I'm offering you a way out. 24 hours to decide. After that, things get much worse. Oh, and Emily, check your email. I sent you something interesting. He hung up. I opened my email with shaking hands. The subject line read, Evidence for Court. Attached were scanned documents. A receipt showing my father's withdrawal of $50,000 dated the exact week I registered Horizon Innovations. A handwritten loan agreement with what looked like my signature at the bottom. Screenshots of emails between Ethan and me discussing management software ideas. I knew immediately that everything was fake. The loan agreement was forged. The emails were doctored, but they looked convincing. A jury might believe them. I called Amanda. She examined the documents remotely while I stayed on the phone. These could be fabricated, but proving that will take time and money, expert witnesses, forensic analysis. Meanwhile, the lawsuit moves forward. What do I do? We could fight, but it'll be expensive and public and messy, or you could consider settling. Settling means giving them money they don't deserve. I know, but it might be the safer option. While we were talking, my phone started blowing up with notifications. I checked social media. Hundreds of new comments, all negative. Fake accounts were posting things like, Emily Davis is a fraud. She stole from her own family. Typical entitled millennial. The attacks were coordinated, relentless. Someone had hired a troll farm to destroy my reputation. I knew it was Dylan. This was psychological warfare. By evening, 3 of my long-term clients had sent emails asking to discuss the controversy. They were worried about bad publicity affecting their own businesses. I spent 2 hours on phone calls reassuring them, but I could hear the doubt in their voices. One client, a man who had been with us since the beginning, said, "Emily, I want to believe you, but this doesn't look good. Maybe we should pause our contract renewal until things settle down." That night, I sat alone in my apartment with a bottle of wine and a blank notebook. I was trying to figure out my next move when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. My mother stood there, her face puffy and red from crying. I opened the door. Mom, Elizabeth, walked in and immediately hugged me. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something. I can't keep quiet anymore." We sat on my couch. Mom twisted her hands in her lap, looking older than I had ever seen her. "Your father is lying. I know he is. That $50,000, he withdrew it to pay gambling debts. He's been gambling for years. I just found out last month." "Gambling?" "Yes. Online poker, sports betting, casino trips to Las Vegas. He's lost over $300,000. That's why he's doing this. He needs your money to cover what he owes." I felt like I had been hit with cold water. "Why? Didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was afraid of him, of what it would mean for our marriage. But I can't watch him destroy you. I'll testify in court if I have to. I'll tell them the truth." I hugged my mother tightly. "Thank you. But you know what this means, right? If you testify against Dad, your marriage is over." She pulled back and looked me in the eyes. "Some things are more important than a bad marriage. You're my daughter. I should have protected you years ago." After Mom left, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I had a choice to make: give in to Dylan's demands and walk away with less money but some peace, or fight back, risk losing everything, and potentially destroy what was left of my family. The easy choice was to settle, take the $30 million from Dylan's group, and move on with my life. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered being 7 years old with straight A's that nobody celebrated. I remembered working 3 jobs to fund my dream while Ethan got handed everything. I remembered the phone call telling me not to show up at Mom's birthday because I would ruin it. No, I wasn't giving up. Not this time. At 6:00 in the morning, I called my college best friend, Sarah Whitman. Sarah and I had been roommates at the University of Washington, stayed close through the years, even as our careers took different paths. She was now a senior partner at Spencer & Crane, one of the most prestigious law firms in Seattle, specializing in white-collar crime and corporate fraud. "Sarah, I need your help. This isn't just a family lawsuit. There's something much bigger happening." We met for coffee at 7. I laid out everything: Dylan Carter, the forged documents, the coordinated social media attack, the pressure from Summit Tech. Sarah listened carefully, taking notes on her tablet. "This sounds like fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. If we can prove Dylan fabricated evidence, he'll lose his law license and face criminal charges. How do we prove it? We investigate, and I know exactly who to call." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a small office above a Thai restaurant in Bellevue. Marcus Taylor was a former FBI agent who had retired 5 years ago to start his own investigation firm. He was in his mid-50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through people. Sarah had worked with him on multiple cases. If anyone could find the truth, it was Marcus. I explained everything again. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "First thing we need to do is verify those bank records Dylan has. I'll check with your father's bank, pull the actual transaction records. If that withdrawal happened, We'll see where the money really went. I also want to investigate Dylan's history. Men like him don't just wake up one day and start forging documents. There's usually a pattern. Give me 48 hours. True to his word, Marcus called me 2 days later. I found something. You need to see this. I drove to his office. Marcus handed me a thick folder. Dylan Carter has a history. 4 years ago, he was sued by a startup founder named Jason Wells. The claim was fraudulent misrepresentation and contract manipulation. Dylan had tried to force Jason into selling his company by creating fake legal problems. The case settled out of court for $200,000, but the pattern is identical to what he's doing to you. Marcus continued. Dylan was also reprimanded by the Washington State Bar Association 2 years ago for unethical practices. If he gets caught doing something illegal again, he loses his license permanently. This guy is desperate. He needs a big win to restore his reputation, and you're his target. But here's the really interesting part. I traced financial records. Your brother Ethan received a $50,000 wire transfer from Dylan's personal account 6 months ago. Dylan has been planning this since long before the Summit Tech deal was announced. I stared at the documents in front of me. He's been setting me up. Exactly. And there's more. I followed the trail on that $50,000 withdrawal from your father's account. It didn't go to you. It went to the Bellagio Casino in Las Vegas. Your father used it to pay down a credit line he had there. I have the casino records to prove it. This was the evidence I needed. Thank you, Marcus. Keep digging. I want to know everything about Dylan Carter. Meanwhile, Sarah had hired a forensic document examiner named Dr. Patricia Morgan. Patricia was an expert who had testified in dozens of high-profile cases. She analyzed the loan agreement Dylan claimed I had signed. After 3 days, she called with results. Emily, this document is definitely forged. The ink used for your signature doesn't match the ink in the body of the document. Different chemical composition. Also, I ran tests on the paper. It's too new. The document claims to be 5 years old, but the paper was manufactured 18 months ago. There's also microscopic evidence that your signature was digitally copied from another document and printed onto this one. This wouldn't hold up in any court. Sarah smiled when I told her, "That's solid evidence. Now we just need to prove Dylan created it." Sarah had her IT specialist analyze the metadata on the emails Dylan sent, showing conversations between me and Ethan. The specialist, a young woman named Allison Harper, called me the next day. These emails have been edited. I can see multiple instances where text was added or changed after the original date stamps. Whoever did this wasn't very careful. They left digital fingerprints everywhere. Can you prove it in court? Absolutely. I can show exactly when and how each edit was made. Marcus continued his investigation into Dylan and Ethan. He set up surveillance on Ethan, following him for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Ethan met Dylan at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle. Marcus positioned himself at a nearby table with a directional microphone. The recording quality was clear. I listened with Sarah in her office. Ethan's voice came through first, nervous and uncertain. "Dylan, what if this doesn't work? What if she proves everything is fake?" Dylan's response was cold, calculated. "She won't. I've covered all the bases, and even if she tries, the process will take months. By then, Summit Tech will have walked away, and her reputation will be destroyed. She'll be desperate. That's when we move in with a settlement offer low enough that she'll take it just to end the pain." Ethan asked, "And I'll get my share?" "You'll get $50,000 as we agreed." $50,000? But you said I'd get half of whatever we won from her. Dylan laughed. "Plans change, Ethan. Be grateful you're getting anything. Without me, you're just a failed restaurant owner with nothing to show for your life." The recording confirmed everything. Ethan was being used, manipulated by someone smarter and more ruthless. I almost felt sorry for my brother. Almost. Marcus had one more piece of information. I looked into your father's gambling debts. Turns out the casino where he owes money is partially owned by an investment group. Guess who's a silent partner? Dylan Carter. He let your father rack up debt, then offered to erase it in exchange for cooperation with the lawsuit. This whole thing was a setup from the beginning. I sat in Sarah's office, surrounded by evidence, forged documents, edited emails, recorded confessions, proof of Dylan's history, proof of the conspiracy. We had everything we needed to destroy Dylan in court. But Sarah had a different suggestion. We could take this to trial and win, but trials take time and money and emotional energy. Or we could go public, hold a press conference, present all the evidence at once, let the court of public opinion work in our favor, force Dylan to back down before this ever sees a courtroom. It was risky. If we went public and somehow failed to convince people, the damage would be permanent. But if we succeeded, Dylan would be finished. His law career would be over, the lawsuit would collapse, and I would get my reputation back. I thought about it for less than a minute. Let's do it. Schedule the press conference for 3 days from now. Sarah grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. We scheduled the press conference for Friday afternoon at the Seattle Harbor Hotel, a neutral, professional location with space for media. Sarah's firm handled all the logistics. We sent invitations to every major news outlet: Seattle Times, Seattle Post-Intelligencer, Business Insider, TechCrunch, Bloomberg, The Wall Street Journal. The invitation was intentionally vague. Horizon Innovations CEO Emily Davis to address recent allegations and present new evidence. Within hours, almost 50 journalists confirmed attendance. Dylan called me the morning of the press conference. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. If you go through with this, Emily, I will destroy you in ways you can't imagine. I kept my voice calm. You already tried, Dylan. Now it's my turn. See you there. I hung up before he could respond. I also reached out to my mother. I explained the plan. Mom, I'm going to tell the truth publicly about Dylan, about Dad's gambling, about everything. I need you there. I need you to confirm what you told me. Elizabeth was silent for a long moment. If I do this, your father will never forgive me. Our marriage will be over. I know. And I'm not going to force you. But this is about more than just me. Dad needs help. He's being manipulated by a dangerous man. Maybe this is the wake-up call he needs. Mom agreed to come. Then I did something I didn't expect to do. I called my father. Dad answered on the second ring. What do you want, Emily? I'm holding a press conference tomorrow at 2. I'm going to present evidence that Dylan Carter forged documents and manipulated you into this lawsuit. I'm going to tell everyone about the gambling debts. You have a choice. You can show up and tell the truth yourself, or you can let me tell it for you. There was a long silence. Then Dad's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. He said he'd ruin me if I didn't cooperate. I know, Dad. That's why this needs to end. Come tomorrow. Make this right. For yourself, for Mom, for our family. I hung up, not sure if he would actually show. Friday arrived. I put on my most professional Navy suit, the one I wore for important client meetings. Sarah met me in the hotel lobby at 1:30. We went over the plan one more time. I would speak first, laying out the timeline. Then Dr. Patricia Morgan would present her forensic evidence. Then Allison Harper would explain the email manipulation. Then Marcus Taylor would share his investigation findings. Finally, we would play the recording of Dylan and Ethan. If Mom showed up, she would speak about Dad's gambling. If Dad showed up, he could tell his own story. At 2:00, I walked into the conference room. It was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Journalists filled every seat, notebooks and recorders ready. I saw Dylan sitting in the third row, arms crossed, face red. Ethan sat next to him, looking like he wanted to disappear. I didn't see Dad or Mom. My heart sank a little, but I understood. This was hard for them. I stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent. Thank you all for coming. I'm here today to address the allegations made against me and to expose the truth behind this lawsuit. I started from the beginning. My childhood. The way Dad favored Ethan. The way I was dismissed and underestimated. Then my journey building Horizon Innovations, the bank loans, the rejection from my father when I asked for help, the 3 jobs I worked to fund my dream. I showed bank statements on the screen behind me, proving every dollar I borrowed came from First National Bank, not from family. Then I introduced Dr. Patricia Morgan. She walked up and presented her analysis in clear scientific terms. This document, claiming to be a loan agreement, is forged. The paper is too new. The ink doesn't match. The signature was copied from another source and digitally placed onto this document. Journalists scribbled notes furiously. I saw Dylan shift uncomfortably in his seat. Next came Allison Harper. She showed side-by-side comparisons of the original emails and the doctored versions Dylan had submitted. You can see here where text was added 6 months after the original email date. The metadata doesn't lie. These emails were manipulated to create a false narrative. More note-taking, more camera flashes. Marcus Taylor presented his investigation. Dylan Carter has a history of this behavior. He was sued 4 years ago for similar tactics against another startup founder. He was reprimanded by the Washington State Bar Association. He has been planning this attack for months, using Emily's family dynamics as leverage. Then Marcus revealed the connection between Dylan and the casino where my father owed money. Dylan deliberately trapped James Davis in debt, then blackmailed him into participating in this fraudulent lawsuit. Finally, I played the recording of Dylan and Ethan at the coffee shop. The room was dead silent as Dylan's voice came through the speakers, admitting the whole scheme. When it finished, journalists erupted with questions. I held up my hand. There's one more person I'd like you to hear from. My mother. The doors at the back of the room opened. Mom walked in, her hands shaking but her face determined. She made her way to the front. I took her hand and guided her to the microphone. Elizabeth Davis stood before the cameras and told the truth. My husband has a gambling problem. He's been struggling for years and I didn't know until recently. Dylan Carter exploited this, offered to erase his debts in exchange for helping with this fraudulent lawsuit. My daughter has never taken a penny from us. Everything she has, she earned through hard work and sacrifice, and I'm proud of her. Tears streamed down her face. I should have spoken up sooner. I should have protected you, Emily. I'm sorry. I hugged her, both of us crying. The room full of tough journalists looked moved. Several of them had tears in their eyes, too. Then something unexpected happened. The doors opened again. My father walked in. He looked terrible. His suit was wrinkled, his face pale and drawn. He walked slowly to the front of the room. I didn't know what to expect. Dad took the microphone with trembling hands. I need to say something. Everything my daughter said is true. I lied. Dylan Carter threatened me. He told me he'd expose my debts, ruin my business reputation, destroy my life if I didn't help him sue Emily. His voice cracked. I've been a terrible father. I underestimated my daughter her entire life. I favored my son because that's what I thought fathers were supposed to do. But I was wrong. When Emily became successful, I felt threatened. Instead of being proud, I tried to take credit. And when Dylan offered me a way out of my debts, I took it, even though it meant hurting my own child. Dad turned to face me directly. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want everyone here to know the truth. Emily Davis built her company with nothing but determination and brilliance. She owes me nothing. I owe her everything. An apology, respect, love. He broke down crying. And I'm dropping this lawsuit immediately. The room burst into applause. I stood frozen for a moment, then walked over and hugged my father. It was the first real hug we had shared in decades. The press conference ended with Sarah announcing that we had filed criminal complaints against Dylan Carter with the district attorney's office. Charges included fraud, forgery, extortion, and conspiracy. Within 24 hours, Dylan was contacted by police. Within a week, the Washington State Bar Association suspended his law license pending investigation. 2 weeks later, he was arrested. His career was over. As for Ethan, I met with him privately a few days after the press conference. He apologized, genuinely this time. I was jealous. I was bitter. Dylan told me this was my chance to finally be successful, and I believed him because I wanted to believe it. I'm sorry, Emily. I forgave him, but I also made it clear that things had to change. I'll help you find real work, Ethan, but you have to earn it. No more handouts. No more shortcuts. He agreed. Gregory Morrison called me the day after the press conference. Emily, that was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. You handled that with incredible strength and grace. So, about the deal. Full payment. All $47 million, no more holds. Our board met this morning and unanimously agreed to proceed. The remaining $20 million was transferred to my account. Within a week, I was officially a multimillionaire. But more importantly, I had my reputation back. I had proven the truth. And I had stood up for myself in a way I never had before. 6 months passed. I sat in my new office at Summit Tech headquarters in downtown Seattle. The spring sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. My title was senior advisor, but my role was more than that. I was helping integrate Horizon Innovation's culture into the larger company, ensuring our original mission of supporting small businesses remained central. The team had grown to 200 employees across 3 states. I watched what I built continue to thrive and evolve, now with resources I could never have provided alone. An email notification popped up on my screen, an invitation from the University of Washington Business School. They wanted me to speak to their MBA students about entrepreneurship, resilience, and building companies from nothing. I smiled and typed out my acceptance. This was the kind of recognition that actually mattered to me now. My relationship with my mother had transformed completely. We had dinner together every Thursday evening, just the 2 of us. Mom had moved into a beautiful apartment in Capitol Hill, one I had helped her find and offered to pay for, though she insisted on covering half the rent with money from her part-time job at an art gallery. She was happier than I had ever seen her, free from the weight of a broken marriage and years of secrets. She had filed for divorce from Dad 3 months ago. It was amicable. Or as amicable as divorce could be. They were both relieved, I think. Dad was a different story. He had sold his accounting firm to pay off his remaining debts and entered a residential treatment program for gambling addiction. He was 3 months sober from gambling, attending meetings twice a week. We met once a month for coffee, usually at a quiet cafe near his new apartment in Portland. Our conversations were still awkward sometimes, but they were real, honest. He was learning to listen instead of lecture, learning to ask about my life instead of talking about his. It wasn't the father-daughter relationship I had dreamed of as a child, but it was something, and it was built on truth, which made it stronger than what we had before. Ethan had surprised me. With my help, he found a job at a small tech startup in Bellevue, working in business development. Entry-level, low pay, but he showed up every day and worked hard. We weren't close, probably never would be, but we could have dinner together without tension. He had apologized multiple times, and I believed he meant it. He was learning humility the hard way, which was probably the only way he ever would have learned it. I used $5 million from the sale to establish the Empower Women's Entrepreneurship Fund. The mission was simple: support women starting businesses, especially women who didn't have family backing or traditional access to capital. We provided grants of up to $50,000 to 50 female founders each year, along with mentorship, resources, and connections. I personally mentored 10 of them, meeting with each one monthly to discuss challenges, celebrate wins, and provide guidance. Turning my pain into purpose gave me more satisfaction than any amount of money ever could. My personal life had also changed in unexpected ways. Gregory Morrison and I had grown closer over the months. It started with professional meetings that turned into long conversations over dinner. He was kind, brilliant, and respected my independence. We started dating 3 months ago, taking things slowly, no rush, no pressure, just two adults who enjoyed each other's company and shared similar values. It wasn't a fairy tale romance, but it was real. And after everything I had been through, real was exactly what I needed. But more than any external change, the biggest transformation was internal. I had spent so many years trying to prove myself to people who would never see me. I thought if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, became successful enough, my father would finally respect me. My brother would finally acknowledge me. My family would finally celebrate me. But I learned something crucial. You can't earn respect from people who aren't willing to give it. And you shouldn't have to. The people who truly love you will support you from the beginning. They'll cheer for your small victories and believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. The ones who only show up after your success, after you've proven yourself, after there's something in it for them, they don't deserve your time or your energy. I learned to build my life around people who saw my value before the world did. My mom, who always believed in me, even when she couldn't say it out loud. Sarah, who dropped everything to help me fight back. The early employees at Horizon Innovations who took a chance on an unknown company. These were my people. I also learned that silence isn't weakness. The night Dad told me not to show up at Mom's birthday, I didn't argue or defend myself. I simply said, "I understand," and walked away. I let my success speak for itself, and it spoke louder than any argument ever could have. Sometimes the most powerful response is to keep building, keep achieving, keep moving forward while others waste their energy trying to tear you down. Forgiveness, I discovered, doesn't mean forgetting. I forgave my father for the years of neglect and favoritism. I forgave Ethan for his jealousy and his willingness to hurt me for money, but I didn't forget how they treated me. I couldn't. Those memories shaped who I became. They taught me resilience, self-reliance, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who genuinely care. Forgiveness allowed me to let go of anger that was poisoning my own happiness, but remembering ensured I would never let anyone treat me that way again. Boundaries, I learned, are not just healthy. They're essential. The biggest lesson, though, was this. Your family doesn't define you. Your choices do. Your work ethic does. Your character does. Your integrity does. I was born into a family that didn't value me, but I chose to value myself. I chose to work harder than anyone else. I chose to believe in my vision when nobody else did. And those choices created the life I have now. Not luck, not privilege, not family connections, just choices made one at a time, day after day, year after year. I stood by my office window, now looking out at the Seattle skyline as the sun set in shades of orange and pink. I thought about that phone call 6 months ago. Don't show up and spoil your mother's birthday. I smiled because I realized something. I didn't spoil anything. I set myself free, free from the need for their approval, free from the weight of being invisible, free to build a life that was entirely, authentically mine. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from a young woman named Emma, one of the entrepreneurs I was mentoring through the Empower Fund. Her message read, "Emily, I just signed my first major client, a $100,000 contract. I couldn't have done this without you believing in me when nobody else did. Thank you for seeing something in me I couldn't see in myself." I smiled and typed back quickly, "Emma, I saw what was always there. Now keep going. You're just getting started. Believe in yourself. That's all you really need." I closed my laptop and gathered my things. I was meeting Mom for dinner in 30 minutes. Then Gregory and I were going to see a play at the Seattle Repertory Theater. My life was full in ways that had nothing to do with money or success or proving anyone wrong. It was full because it was mine, built on my own terms, filled with people who genuinely cared about me, aligned with values that mattered. Life wasn't perfect. I still had hard days. I still sometimes felt that old, familiar ache of wanting my father's approval, even though I knew I didn't need it anymore. I still dealt with doubts and fears and the lingering trauma of years spent feeling invisible. But I also had joy, real, deep, earned joy. The kind that comes from knowing you survived something difficult and came out stronger. The kind that comes from using your pain to help others. The kind that comes from living authentically instead of performing for an audience that will never appreciate you. If you're reading this, if you're listening to this story and you feel invisible right now, I want you to hear me clearly. If you feel like nobody believes in you, like your family doesn't see your value, like you're working twice as hard for half the recognition, I need you to know something. Believe in yourself first. That is enough. You don't need anyone's permission to be great. You don't need validation from people who refuse to give it. You already have everything you need inside you. The strength, the intelligence, the determination, the worth. It's all there. Don't wait for someone to discover you. Don't wait for someone to invest in you. Don't wait for someone to tell you that you're good enough. Start now with whatever resources you have. Build something, create something, become something. Not to prove others wrong, but to prove yourself right, to show yourself what you're capable of when you stop waiting for permission and start taking action. Success isn't about making the people who doubted you feel bad. It's about proving to yourself that you were right to believe in your dreams when nobody else did. It's about waking up every day and choosing yourself, choosing your vision, choosing to keep going even when it's hard. And it will be hard. There will be moments when you want to quit, when the rejection feels like too much, when the doubt creeps in and whispers that maybe everyone else was right about you. In those moments, remember why you started. Remember what you're building. Remember that the people who gave up on you don't get to define your limits. And when you finally make it, when your hard work pays off, and people suddenly want to be associated with your success, don't let them rewrite history. Don't let them claim they supported you all along. The truth matters. Your story matters. The nights you cried alone matter. The times you almost gave up but didn't matter. The people who believed in you from the beginning matter. Honor that truth. Protect that story because it's yours. I didn't need my father's permission to succeed. I never did. And neither do you. Whatever dream you're carrying, whatever vision keeps you up at night, whatever impossible thing you think you can't achieve because nobody in your life supports it, I'm here to tell you, go build it anyway. Let the doubters doubt. Let the critics criticize. Let the family members who should support you continue to overlook you. None of that changes what you're capable of. None of that diminishes your potential. None of that has any power over your future unless you give it power. The woman I was 6 months ago would have been terrified to stand up to my father, to expose the truth publicly, to risk everything for the sake of justice. But the woman I became through that fire is stronger than I ever imagined possible. Not because the fire didn't hurt, it did, but because I walked through it anyway. Because I chose truth over peace. Because I chose self-respect over family approval. Because I chose myself. Finally, after a lifetime of being everyone's last choice. So here's my final message to anyone who needs to hear it. You are enough right now, as you are, with whatever resources you have or don't have, whatever education you got or didn't get, whatever family support exists or doesn't exist. You are enough to start. You are enough to try. You are enough to build something meaningful. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Not your parents, not your siblings, not society, not even the voice in your own head that sometimes sounds like all of them combined. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. And when people ask how you did it, when they ask where you found the strength or the courage or the resources, tell them the truth. You found it inside yourself because that's where it always was. That's where it still is. That's where it will always be, waiting for you to recognize it, claim it, and use it to build the life you deserve. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever achieved something great only to have the people closest to you try to diminish it or take credit for it? How did you handle it? What did you learn? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or strength or a reminder of your own power, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about overcoming adversity and finding your strength. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's fighting their own battles with family dynamics or self-worth, or the courage to pursue their dreams. Together, we're stronger. Together, we rise. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that your dreams matter, even when others don't. I'm cheering for you. I believe in you. Now go show the world what you're made of. You've got this.